In this presentation, I will be reviewing Cluster A personality disorders and practice questions for the ASWB exam. I'm your presenter, Tanisha Dell, founder and tutor of Envision Pass. Personality disorders are often found on the ASWB exam. When studying personality disorders, it is good to be able to identify them under their clusters. Now, the DSM-5 lists 10 specific personality disorders that are grouped into 3 clusters: Cluster A, Cluster B, and Cluster C. The personality disorders are grouped into clusters because of their shared behaviors, and in this presentation, I will be looking at Cluster A personality disorders. According to the DSM-5, in order for a person to be diagnosed with personality disorder, they must have an enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from expectations of the individual's culture, is pervasive and inflexible, and has an onset in adolescence or early adulthood, is stable over time, and leads to distress or impairment. So the person's personality usually affects their daily functioning, causing significant distress or impairment in personal, social, and/or occupational situations. Now keep in mind that this cannot be due to the effects of substances or medical conditions. In addition, individuals with personality disorders are what's called egosyntonic. And egosyntonic refers to when a person believes that behaviors or feelings are a natural part of who they are. So they do not see themselves as disturbed, and they often fail to seek treatment because they believe that their distress is not caused by their own behavior, but it's likely caused by others. Let's take a look at Cluster A personality disorders. Cluster A is known as the odd and eccentric or peculiar personality, and these personality disorders are paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal. Individuals under Cluster A usually are socially withdrawn, often detached from social relationships, often suspicious of others, and also appears awkward in social settings. So, Cluster A personality disorders are characterized by their unusual ways of thinking or acting, and these unusual behaviors are very similar to that of schizophrenia. The only difference is that neither show symptoms of explicit hallucinations or delusions. According to the DSM-5, paranoid personality disorder is a pattern of distrust and suspiciousness such that others' motives are interpreted as malevolent. And people with paranoid personality disorder read hidden demeaning or threatening meaning into innocent remarks or events, and they often suspect others as harming or deceiving them, which are unjustifiable. They distrust others because they think that people are out to get them or harm them, and this misconception leads to rapid anger or hostility towards others, which often results into them holding long-term resentments. For these reasons, they are often isolated from others and have difficulty maintaining long-lasting relationships. Now, the DSM-5 states that schizoid personality disorder has a pervasive pattern of detachment from social relationships and a restricted range of expression of emotions in interpersonal settings. They may appear aloof, having a flat affect or humorless and cold, and individuals with schizoid personality disorder are usually loners. They do not enjoy being in close relationships even with their family, so they reject the notion of having sexual relationships. They also prefer solitary activities and will find excuses to be alone. They have excessive preoccupation with fantasy and introspection, which means that they are more interested in their own thoughts than what goes on around them. And in this case, it is often obvious that these individuals are indifferent. Therefore, they tend to feel like an outcast or an outsider. A schizotypal personality disorder has a pervasive pattern of social and interpersonal deficits, marked by acute discomfort with and reduced capacity for close relationships, as well as cognitive or perceptual distortions and eccentricities of behavior. Individuals with schizotypal personality disorder thought processes include magical thinking, suspiciousness, and illusions. And they tend to have paranoid fears that is caused by their unusual odd thoughts or beliefs. For example, they may think that someone or the government is spying on them. Their thoughts or beliefs are often centered around government surveillances or alien activities. And if you insist that this is not true, they may rigorously scrutinize and defend their belief. Their magical thinking includes thinking that they have psychic powers and believing that they can make anything happen if they think about it or wish for it. They also have strange speech patterns as their ideas are loosely associated and vague in description. Unfortunately, these types of beliefs and thinking affects their behaviors and lifestyle. Their eccentric appearances, unkempt, noticeably unclean, and unusual matching of clothing and behavior creates isolation as they are ridiculed and viewed by others as eccentric and bizarre, leading to their excessive persistent social anxiety as they may think that they are the constant focus of criticism and gossip. So you will find that these individuals are withdrawn and prefers to be alone because they tend to feel as if they do not fit into society or society's expectation. And if they do have some sort of social contact, it is usually restricted to just immediate relatives. Now let's review practice questions. A social worker meets with a mother and her 24-year-old son. The mother expressed concerns about her son's behavior and shared that her son is often withdrawn and shows no interest in social activities. The son appears extremely uninterested and sat quietly looking through his astronomy magazine. The mother states that her son rejects close relationships even with her, and he has never been in any form of relationships. The social worker notices that the son's affect seems flat and detached. During the assessment, the son denies having delusions and hallucinations or believes that someone is watching or following him. What is the most likely diagnosis? A. Schizophrenia. B. Schizotypal personality disorder. C. Schizoid personality disorder. Or D. Depression. And the correct answer is C. Schizoid personality disorder. Individuals diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder often is withdrawn and shows no interest in social activities. Though there are similarities to schizotypal having lack of close friends, the difference is that her son is not experiencing any beliefs that someone is watching or following him. And this behavior or thinking is exhibited in schizotypal personality disorder. Diagnosis of schizophrenia would be if he was experiencing delusions or hallucinations. Though the son may be withdrawn and shows no interest in social activities, there is not enough information to diagnose him with depression. Now let's review the next question. During an initial session, a social worker meets with a young man who appears restless, irritable, and overly anxious. The social worker notices that the man started sweating profusely as he stares around the room. The man stated that he does not trust anyone and believes that he is constantly being watched and followed. What should the social worker do first? A. Diagnose the man with paranoid personality disorder. B. Refer the man to a psychiatrist. C. Conduct a suicide assessment. Or D. Rule out illegal substances or medication use. And the correct answer is D. Rule out illegal substances or medication use. When reading case scenarios that have signs and symptoms, always pay close attention to them and ensure that it relates with the answer choice you choose. For instance, the young man appears restless, irritable, and overly anxious, so we see mood swings. He also is sweating profusely as he stares around the room. He also stated that he does not trust anyone and believes that he's constantly being watched and followed. So we're seeing excessive anxiety and paranoia. Always remember the question is asking, what should the social worker do first? Because all these signs and symptoms can be related to the use of illegal substances, it is important to rule out D. There's no information stated here that he's trying to hurt himself, so there's no need to conduct a suicide assessment. Before referring him to a psychiatrist, we want to rule out substance and medication use first. The diagnosis will not be paranoid personality disorder. It will instead be schizotypal due to his paranoid ideas and suspicions of being constantly watched and followed. Also remember, the question did not ask what is the most likely diagnosis, so it is not requiring you to diagnose the client. Always avoid jumping into action if not needed, and focus on how you can assist the client in the present moment. Now let's review the next question. A social worker meets for the first time with a client at a treatment facility. The client explains that he thinks he suffers from anxiety. The client states that he is often uncomfortable in social settings and he has no friends and prefers being alone because people often talk about him. The social worker notices that the client has an eccentric appearance and behavior. What is the most likely diagnosis? A. Cluster B, B. Cluster A, C. Cluster C, or D. Cluster D? And the answer is B. Cluster A. Cluster A personality disorder is characterized as odd and eccentric. Here, the client is often uncomfortable in social settings. He has no friends and prefers being alone because people often talk about him. He also has an eccentric appearance and behavior. So, in this case, the client specifically is most likely diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder. Typically, people with schizotypal personality disorder do not seek treatment, and when they do not seek treatment for issues related to their eccentric or odd behaviors. It is usually for issues related to their anxiety or depressed feelings. There is no Cluster D personality disorder, and Cluster C are the anxious and fearful personalities, which includes avoidant, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and dependent personality disorder. Cluster B personality disorder are the dramatic and overly emotional personalities, which includes histrionic, narcissistic, borderline, and antisocial personality disorders. Now, Cluster B and Cluster C personality disorder will be reviewed in my next presentations. Now, let's move on to the next question. A pervasive distrust and suspiciousness of others is often found in which of the following personality disorders? A. Paranoid personality disorder, B. Schizoid personality disorder, C. Schizotypal personality disorder, or D. Borderline personality disorder? And the answer is A. Paranoid personality disorder. The keywords are pervasive distrust and suspiciousness. A person with borderline personality disorder has a pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, moods, and control over impulses, and this fall under Cluster B, dramatic and overly emotional. Schizotypal has a pervasive pattern of social and interpersonal deficits marked by acute discomfort with reduced capacity for close relationships. They also have distorted thinking and perception and eccentric behavior. And schizoid has a pervasive pattern of detachment from social relationships and a restricted range of expression of emotions in interpersonal settings. Once again, thank you for watching. Feel free to leave comments or questions below, and you can also suggest areas that you would like to be reviewed. Don't forget to subscribe to see more videos. Also, visit our website for upcoming webinars for both LMS and LCSW exam. Have a great day.